Hi, Molly. Welcome back to the show. I am so excited that you are joining me again.
Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, so your new book, Making Words Stick, was recently released. Congrats on writing that. I would love to know, why did you decide to write this book? What was it about this content that you felt so compelled, needed to be shared with teachers?
First of all, wrote it for the amazing opportunity to collaborate with Katie Pace Miles, who is just, her work is just so fantastic. And she learned from the best of the best. She was a doctoral student under Linnea Airy. And we really wrote it because Linnea's theory of orthographic mapping is not a new one. It has been around since the 1990s, but lived in academic journals and was not particularly accessible to people. And so we sort of felt that this was really important information that needed to come out of academic journals and into the hands of classroom teachers and school leaders. And so it was really to sort of help people understand what orthographic mapping is and why it matters, and how to have a classroom instructional line so that orthographic mapping is a process that all students go through.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you wrote that because, if I'm being honest, when I was in college, I had never heard that term, orthographic mapping. It really wasn't until a few years ago when I started really digging into, learning more about the science of reading research, that term started to pop up. So, in case we do have some listeners who are maybe unfamiliar with orthographic mapping, can you explain really what it is and why this is something that educators do need to be be concerned about?
Sure. Yeah. And even the term itself
Yeah.
sounds intimidating.
It
So,
does.
yeah, you're not alone with it being, not sort of rolling off the tip of your tongue. So, orthographic mapping is the process by which every word becomes instantly recognized and retrieved. And the information that I always use to convince people about why orthographic mapping matters is the fact that adult readers have a lexicon of 50,000 words that we instantly recognize. So, if you think about the reading that you did today, just in your everyday life, maybe you read a recipe or an email or a newspaper headline or social media tweets or what have you, chances are you did almost no decoding. Now, maybe there was like a proper noun or a last name or a street name or a town or something that you decoded, but practically every other word that you encounter on a daily basis is instantly recognized by you. So, how did they get there? They got there through a process called orthographic mapping. It is impossible, of course, to memorize 50,000 words. It's just not possible. They got there through this process of orthographic mapping, which really is this behind the scenes cognitive process. And behind the scenes, I mean, it is something that is happening in our brain. So I want to be really clear. It's not something that we sort of tell kids, all right, let's orthographically map this word, or let's take out our orthographic mapping workbooks, because it's this cognitive process. And really, it's this cognitive process that helps us instantly recognize and retrieve words. And to get to the point where words are instantly recognized, you really need three forms of the word, or three sources of information. You need how the word looks, so it's visual representation. You need how the word sounds, so it's phonology and how the letters and sounds map together. And then you need how what the meaning of the word is. It's semantics, how it's used, how it's applied, how it's related to other words. So that trifecta of things is the process by which orthographic mapping is occurring.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, what happens if we don't focus on orthographic mapping, right? So it's like, obviously, you talked about one of the reasons why you guys wrote this book is to really take it out of the research and put it in the hands of educators. Well, what happens if we don't do it, or like don't make it a priority in our
Sure.
classrooms? What's the
Sure.
result?
Well, I will answer that question by saying what I'm seeing all the
Yeah.
time now in middle school classrooms. I'm
Mhm.
seeing lots and lots of middle school readers. Teachers are saying kids can't comprehend. Teach me a way to unlock comprehension. What's a strategy that will help them understand their social studies textbook or their biology textbook or whatever? And I always say, like, you don't want the answer I'm going to give you, because we always want the quick and
Yeah.
easy answer. Really, what's happening is too many of our kids don't have enough words orthographically mapped. So what happens is they are wasting or spending precious cognitive energy on decoding. And when that happens, they don't have enough sight words. They don't have enough words that they instantly recognize. So their fluency, of course, pays
Mhm.
the price. And then we allot precious cognitive energy, which detracts from comprehension. So much of what I'm seeing kids grades 4 and above, what we see outwardly is they lack
Mhm.
comprehension. And when you really like peel off the band-aid, it's really an issue of not enough words orthographically mapped or instantly recognized.
Yeah, and I know because we get that question so often from teachers, right? It's like I have students who struggle with reading. They automatically assume it's a comprehension issue, so they
Sure.
want a comprehension quick fix. But it's like we have to kind of dig a little bit deeper and sort of
Yeah.
think about what is causing that comprehension issue. And to your point, it's the fact that kids don't have enough words in their own personal word bank to be able to read fluently.
Yeah, and
Um,
I always say, like, you can keep putting a Band-Aid on that
mhm.
gaping wound as much as you want, but until you're addressing the underlying deficit, it is, nothing is really going to change long term for kids.
Yeah. And I know, especially, our audience is mostly third, fourth, and fifth grade teachers. And I know so many of them feel this sense of like almost like they're ill equipped to support students who are struggling with this, just because, I feel like anything that has to do with like phonics and phonemic awareness is really focused on the primary grades. And we forget that third, fourth, and fifth grade teachers need support with that too. And so one of the things I loved about your book is that you have a section that is really dedicated to these bigger kids, and these older grade teachers help them know that this is something they can focus on. And I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. But in your book, you share this 4-step orthographic mapping routine that can have a lot of like variations depending on the grade level. But can you walk us through what that routine looks like?
So much of the book is helping teachers understand the brain science around orthographic mapping. And I should say that it's not just words that we decode or lift off the page. It's also the process by which we encode or spell
Mm-hmm,
words.
mm-hmm.
So we've created this instructional protocol that every step of it starts with the letter S, so you can remember it easily.
Love the alliteration. It's so
Yes.
helpful.
We're definitely at the points of midlife where we need things and we need
Yeah.
whatever help we can get.
Whatever makes it
Everything.
easy.
Yep. So the first step is see and say. And here students literally see the visual representation of the word. So they see it in, black type, they see it in courier font, they see it in cursive, they see it in all different variations. And then they say the word. And it sounds sort of obvious, but you'd be surprised by how much we don't give kids the chance to make a phonological representation of the word. So they literally need to hear how the word is pronounced. They need to say it themselves so they can say it, as a chorus or partner reading or what have you. So they see it and say it.
I'm not surprised by that though, because it's like I remember when I was a fourth grade teacher, not having a lot of support and understanding this. It's like every week we did a spelling list.
Sure.
And it's like at the beginning of the week, we would literally hand the students the list, not reading them to them, not having them say them back to us, and just like, go home and memorize these. And so I'm not surprised to hear that we're
That was
missing that,
total.
yeah,
That
that
was
phonological component.
100% my
Yeah.
classroom instruction with spelling. And I remember thinking like, ooh, it's so quiet in here. Learning must
So
be
nice.
happening. When now I'm like, wow, I did not give those kids
Yeah.
a phonological representation of the
Yeah.
word.
If it's quiet, learning might not be happening.
Sure. So in the second step, they segment and spell. And this is where they do the work of connecting the phonemes and the graphemes. So we do some of that, what many people know as sort of the heart word
Mhm.
routine, where we call a kid's attention to, wow, this word has 6 letters, but it only has 3 sounds, or this part of the word makes the sound it's supposed to. This you have to memorize by heart. So we segment and sound and spell. We connect the phonemes and the graphemes, or we map the letters and the sounds, and then we spell it. And that involves all the sort of things that we do with decoding and encoding, Elkanon boxes, check your spelling, that sort of thing. The next part is study and suss out. And suss is a British term that means to sort of figure something out. So in this step, we're having kids explore the meaning and the application and the usage of the word. So this is where they're activating the part of the brain that's all about language comprehension, what a word means, its multiple meanings, how it's semantically related to other words, how to use the word, how to apply the word. So they're really getting at usage, application, and meaning. And then the last step is search and stick. And here, kids are really looking at transferring the word, not just from a word in isolation, but to actual application in text, and then reading with fluency, so automatic recognition. So in this whole protocol, these 4 different steps, we're really getting at those 3 different
Mhm.
areas of the sort of, I think of it as almost like a three-legged stool, where you need the representation of the word, the phonology of the word, and then the meaning of the word in an instructional routine that kind of makes it classroom friendly and easy to apply for kids really K through 5.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, I know, like, I feel like I've seen routines similar to this or just sort of components of it, especially for K2. But like you said, this routine would work even in third, fourth, and fifth grade. Are there any like modifications or things that teachers would need to do if they are wanting to use this routine in the upper grades?
So much of the book is sort of
Mhm.
some of these strategies and routines and activities that you can sort of pick and choose. Some are better for older grade, or some are better for more multisyllabic words or words that have multiple meanings. The one big thing that is a variation is when we look at function words. Function words are these, I always think of them as like if you used to play charades and you're trying to show like a short word, a little
Mhm.
word. Function words are those little words that are often helping verbs, they are prepositions. They're words that don't have concrete meaning, but they serve as semantic glue. So they're words like of and from and which and were. And why are these so tricky for kids?
Mhm.
So, first of all, lots of them look visually
Yeah.
similar, the W words, the H words, of and off and from, and all of those. But more importantly, particularly for our kids who have any sort of reading difficulties, as well as our multilingual learners, we know that one of the things that trips kids up about these words is you can't define them. How do I explain to somebody off or
Mhm.
of or which? So if I can't define it, if I can't act it out, or I can't sketch a picture of it or show a picture of it, I'm sort of kicking away one of the legs of that stool. And so now the stool becomes even more wobbly. So when we think about the third stage, which is the study and suss out, here we have to do activities that are about usage and not just definition. So one of the things that I like to do is I'll take a passage of a text that's a grade level text, and I actually use AI to generate these all the time. Write me a fourth grade passage about, plants. Include these function
Mhm.
words: from, which, when. And then I have AI spit out a 4 sentence passage, and then I delete those target function words and I put them in a word bank for kids. And it's almost like Mad Libs, where kids are having to figure out which word is the semantic glue that makes this sentence and text connected and hold meaning, as a way to get to function word application and not just definition.
I love that. And I'm so glad you shared that explanation because, again, like I remember that. And I used to teach first and second grade, but I remember, especially in the young grades, I'm like, why are these words so tricky for students to sort of like grasp the meaning of? Because they're, relatively similar in terms of like the spelling and even like the usage can sometimes be so similar. So that totally makes sense that because it's missing one of those, sort of like processor pillars that it becomes unstable and we need to give them more practice with that.
Yep. Yep.
I know you share quite a few different instructional activities that work for just the various steps in the routine. Could you share a few of your favorites?
Yeah, so Katie is more of a K through 2 foundational like literacy. I'm more of the vocabulary,
Yeah.
meaning, usage, application. So I really like the things that we do with content words, where we'll do like sentence scramble. So you take a sentence that's rich with some of those content words, you write it on sentence strips and then cut it up, put it in a bag, and then kids have to do the work of unscrambling the sentence so they get the meaning of those content words and the application of them. So I like doing stuff with that. And then I really like any of the activities that we recommend for some of the vocabulary stuff. Some of those things that are word expert cars and examples and non-examples, where kids are really diving into the meaning and the usage and the application of words. I've just always My area of research has always been comprehension, and comprehension and vocabulary, of course, are so closely related. So I always have fun doing some of those things, which are really the meaning of words. And as much as this is like sort of an instructional routine for K through 5, there are elements that I think are just good
Mhm.
instructional strategies or applications, regardless of what grade level you're in. So I've been living in the middle school world a fair amount this past spring, watching instruction, doing audits of 6 through 8 content area classrooms, and I'm surprised by how much instruction would have been improved with
Mm.
some of these just
Yeah.
basic vocabulary things. I still see vocabulary instruction where kids are literally
Yeah.
not saying the word, spelling it. So they've just focused on the
The meaning.
definition of the word, but there's no way kids are going to add a word to their expressive or receptive vocabulary if they can't map the phonemes and graphemes, if they can't say it or
Mhm.
know its pronunciation. So as much as this is like a K through 5 focus, there are things that I think to know a word, you have to have those 3 elements, which are how it looks, how it sounds, and what it means. And that word could be photosynthesis. If you're a 7th grade biology teacher, it could be, if you're a cuneiform, if you're a middle school content area teacher in social studies, but you still have to have the know it, say
Mhm.
it, spell it, all of those different iterations of the word.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I can think of, I at least in high school taking like chemistry and physics and so many of the vocabulary words I was like, I can't read this
Yep.
because the way I'm reading it, like I'm reading it in my head the way I think it is, but I know that's not how it is pronounced in the real world. So yeah, the fact that there needs to be that phonological piece. But I think to your point, it's like, even that scrambling sentence activity, like that could totally work in middle school. And
Sure.
it's like the content is going to be the thing that makes that a more rigorous activity than if you were going to give that same activity to a third grader. So yeah, I love the idea of being able to use so many of these same routines in middle school and probably even high school because it's just good instructional practices.
Yep.
So I know that phonics and really word study are sometimes overlooked in, formal curriculum programs that teachers are handed. So if an educator doesn't have access to either a set of resources or a curriculum that focuses on orthographic mapping, and that's something that they would really like to make more of a priority this next year, where should they start? How do they start to sort of piece this together on their own? Whether it is, are there a specific set of concepts they should consider teaching? Implementing certain routines first? Like, where do they begin if they're trying to do this on their own?
Well, so I think we're at a place where there are so many resources that are available for
Hmm.
people of any budget, and so many different ways to get knowledge. I always recommend people look at the resources from UFly.
Hmm.
UFly is obviously so user friendly and
Hmm.
so cost effective. And you can even take like the UFly scope and sequence, even if you don't actually have the book, and then just take some of the instructional protocols that we've curated and collected in this particular book and make them work for your kids. So I think there are great ways to go about doing that. And I also recommend that people look at the IES guides.
Hmm.
The IES guides, I always say that they're not technically free. Our taxpayer dollars
Yeah.
paid for them. So let's take advantage of them. And they are widely available. And actually, much of the instructional protocol that we created, we based on the research that was curated and synthesized in the IES guide. So I think those are a great place for anybody to start and make these materials work for them. And we were very careful to write this book, like assuming
Hmm.
bare bones,
Yeah.
meaning you don't have to have a purchased package and program. You don't have to have whatever, could map with whatever scope and sequence you're using, because that was always what we wanted to approach, is this making it happen for even with limited
Yeah.
resources.
And that's one of the things that I loved about y'all's book. I was like, I could see teachers using this if they don't have, either if they have resources that they don't love and they're trying to find ways to improve it, or if they don't have resources, because you guys do a really good job of just like spelling out that protocol and sort of the activities that fit into each of the 4 steps. Finally, what bit of encouragement could you maybe offer to a teacher who is listening and this is their first time hearing orthographic mapping, and maybe, they're feeling a little bit overwhelmed because it's like, wow, this is all brand new to me and I want to get started. But it does feel uncomfortable, sort of dipping their toes in this new concept that they've never even heard of before.
I like to share the experience that I had with a word last year. So last summer, I was reading a murder mystery, like beach book kind of thing. And I came across a word that was not orthographically mapped for me. And I went through this process of mapping the word so that every time I then encountered it, it was instant for me. And the reason that I explain this is because I want to make it really clear to people that orthographic mapping isn't just a like K through 2 thing.
Mhm.
It's the process by which any word becomes instantly recognized. So I'm reading this book and I come to this word Slough. And OUGH, I think there's like 6 different
Yeah.
pronunciations of the
It's like,
word.
why do we do
So, right.
that?
So I'm like, great. The way the word was used, I could sort of use context clues to figure out, oh, this is a swamp or a kind of a boggy area, a marsh. I could figure that out. So I kind of had the meaning, and but I didn't have the pronunciation. So what did I do? Well, I went to the dictionary and I
Mhm.
clicked on the little sound icon and I heard how it was pronounced and then I mapped it. And that was for me the reminder of, oh, this is a process that we
I'll
all
go
go
through.
through.
Yeah.
And so when you understand like my experience as an adult, now the rest of the time I read that book, I was like, oh, the word slough. I know it's a bog. I
Mhm.
know this is how it's say. I know even though there's 6 letters, it only is actually 3 sounds. That is orthographic mapping. And what I just explained as a proficient reader took me like 1 or 2 times to see the word. Now, that's not the case for every kid. There's all sorts of research about the numbers around how many encounters you have to do to get a word mapped. But I think that is this reminder of like, oh, that's what it took for
Mhm.
a word to be instantly retrieved.
Well, and I appreciate you sharing that because that process isn't scary. It's not complicated, right? It's just this reminder that we need to make sure that we are giving students that opportunity to see it, to hear it, and then to understand the meaning. And that does not have to be an overly complicated thing for teachers to do.
Absolutely.
Well, Molly, if teachers are interested in getting your book or learning more about orthographic mapping or more about the amazing things that you're doing in the literacy world, because I know you just have a ton of knowledge to share, where can they find it and how can they connect with you online?
Yeah, so the book is in the Scholastic Science of Reading series, so people can look at the Scholastic store for it, or my website where I share lots of other podcasts, webinars, articles, all sorts of things is drmollyNess.com. So drmollyness.com, and I love sharing resources and answering questions and such. So encourage anybody to reach out at any point.
Awesome. We will definitely link to that in the show notes. And again, thank you so much for coming back on today. I'm so excited for our teachers to listen to this episode.
Thank you. Good to see you.